Hi, Leeds Digital Festival 2020. I'm thrilled to be part of this session with Agile Stationery. I'm Matthew Skelton from Conflux, and I put together the multi-team software delivery assessment back in 2019 to help organizations develop and evolve the capability to self-assess their own software delivery capabilities. So the software delivery assessment is based on principles and ideas from several well-respected books across lots of different dimensions of software delivery, and it's Creative Commons share alike. It's on GitHub, so it's free to use and adapt. In a minute, I'll show you this amazing card deck from Agile Stationery, but first let me just give you a bit of background to the assessment. The idea is to assess many software teams rapidly on a regular basis, like every 3 months, and to make the assessments really valuable to teams as part of their continuous improvement. So each team-focused assessment session is like a retrospective. It builds on the Spotify squad health check approach, which is quite well known, but we're not just assessing team health. We do that, but we also look at continuous delivery, operability, testability, deployment, and flow. And it's really valuable. These additional dimensions on top of team health seem to be really valuable. So at Conflux, we've run these multi-team software delivery assessments for several large organizations over the past few years. And then since we published the format and details of the assessments, we've seen these being adopted by organizations in different parts of the world. And a key aspect of the assessment is that it scales to many, many different teams. And the way we do that is we use 2 facilitators in each session. One facilitator is actually facilitating the retrospective session, asking the questions, kind of stimulating conversation, that kind of thing. And the other facilitator is there to learn how to do that so that they can go and facilitate future sessions. So we can actually scale out the approach really, really quickly. The assessments can be run both in person, like in an office, or fully remotely. And these cards from Agile Stationery really help the assessment in either situation. I particularly like these voting cards, so like 1 to 5, that come in the pack. And you can use these in person or on a video call. For example, if we take one of the questions from the operability set, operability dimension, this is around system health, and it says, how do we know that the system is healthy or unhealthy? So the facilitator asks that question, and then people get to vote. And so there's a kind of a 5-star response and a 1-star response on the card here, so people can get a feel for where their team practices are. So if I hear that question and I hear the different criteria, if I think we're up at the 5-star response level, then I'll show this card. Obviously, can show it on a video call or just show it in person around a room. If I think we're actually not doing quite well, maybe I'll just show a 2 instead. So it's a nice way of getting to understand how the whole team sees the team practices around these different dimensions very quickly. So I'm really excited to have worked with Agile Stationery on this card deck. I think it's really, really awesome. I think it really helps to make the assessments work really smoothly, and kind of makes them a bit more interactive. I hope you enjoy using the assessment, and get in touch, send us a pull request on GitHub, and I hope it really works well for you using the card deck from Agile Stationery. So we created the MSDA model because we needed to assess more than 70 teams over a really short space of time to get a good understanding and baseline for the current practices, so we could then identify areas that needed cross-team and cross-supplier improvements. We also wanted to find any problems with the working environment, like platform, processes, communications, leadership, decision-making, commercial contracts, all that kind of thing, if any of these were hampering good engineering practices. So the way we went about creating the model and choosing the books and things that form the base of the questions was, we started by thinking about the operational aspects of assessing more than 70 teams rapidly in a sustainable way. And actually the Spotify squad health check approach seemed like a really good technique to adopt because loads of people have been using this technique around the world. We also like the way that the Spotify Squad Health Check emphasised team improvement and how it feels like a kind of retrospective session when it's being run. So then we characterised the current challenges in the organisation where we were, and we looked for books that addressed these challenges. We looked for books with specific targeted recommendations for practices to improve engineering at multiple different levels. Obviously, each of the books that we've chosen has many different kind of recommendations, so we used our expertise to sort of zoom in and select a small subset of practices that would guide teams in the right direction, even though some specific practices had to be left out of the assessment because we couldn't cover everything that was in every book. At the time, I was engineering lead in this organisation with more than 70 teams, and we had insights from lots of different areas of focus in the organisation. So these insights help us to select the practices and assessment criteria that would actually apply most helpfully to the greatest number of teams and systems. And actually, after running these assessments many times in different organisations, I think the assessment criteria that we chose there actually work really well in general. So how's it work in practice? So it's worth pointing out that a really important aspect of the multi-team software delivery assessment is that the assessment helps teams to improve and helps the organisation to improve. We're not there to compare or rank teams. At first, when we ran it at the very first time, some teams kind of were understandably suspicious of the assessment, especially like an outside consultancy coming in. But actually, we took time. It's important to take time and care to explain and reassure people that the assessment's not there to punish or even reward teams, but it's actually to help all teams improve, looking for kind of cross-team or organizational weaknesses. Another thing that really helps with the kind of sustainability and adoption of this software delivery assessment is the way it's kind of like a viral facilitation model. So what does that mean? That in each retrospective session, each assessment session, with a particular team, we've got a facilitator, but then there's a second facilitator shadowing the main facilitator, and the second facilitator can then go and run 2 or more team assessments themselves somewhere else. So if you've got this kind of exponential growth, kind of viral growth of the ability to facilitate these sessions, then rapidly you can scale up to 70 or 100 teams or 500 teams very, very quickly by effectively training up the facilitator in each session. It's important that these facilitators are mostly from the organisation itself, so the organisation itself develops a capability to run its own assessments on an ongoing basis. And if you look at how often large successful companies are doing this, typically it's about every 3 months you'll run one of these assessments, something like that kind of frequency. So like with many continuous improvement techniques, a really important aspect of the multi-team software delivery assessment is the conversations that happen as a result of the assessment. So conversations within individual teams and conversations across teams. For any kind of long-term improvement approach to be effective, the organisation needs to give time for people to act on the realizations that they had in the session. So like make sure you're making space for lunchtime talks, mini showcases, communities of practice, internal tech conferences, external blog posts. All of these kind of things help to nurture and evolve a thriving engineering community that seeks to improve its practices over time. So combine these assessments, make sure they're on an ongoing basis, perhaps every 3 months, make sure that the capability is internal to the organization eventually, and combine these assessments with other practices to help kind of build a kind of sustainable approach to ongoing improvement in engineering practices throughout the organization.